Hi, this is Pat Moorhead with More Insights and Strategy, and we're here for another More Insights and Strategy podcast. We have two firsts for you today. First off, we're doing a podcast in real life versus remote, and I am here at the Accenture Austin headquarters building, which is pretty cool. I want to talk about that a little bit later with Accenture Semiconductor lead Syed Alam. And second of all, we are here for a first special edition for semiconductors, something that we talk a lot about out there. But no, this building is pretty awesome. And although I've talked about my entire team working remote for the last 11 years, an experience here might get me back into an office. This is a great combination of history with brick walls and modern accoutrements that needs to attract all those Accenture employees that come into town. So let's head over to the couch and introduce you to Syed. I'd like to introduce my guest, Syed Alam, practice head for semiconductors at Accenture. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and welcome to our new Accenture office in Austin.
No, this is great, and I really appreciate last week you gave me the grand tour, and I really liked the combination of, there's some history, so there's brick walls, because in fact this building is historic, but you put modern elements of it as well. And I was joking with you as well that, hey, I don't like it just because it's within view of where I live or where I work. I genuinely love your office. But I do have to ask though, our backdrop seems very unique. Can you tell the audience about it?
Yeah, it's an artwork by a local Austin artist, Mike Johnson. He goes by Truth. Yeah. So it's Mike Truth Johnson. And it just highlights all the good and cool things about Austin, and it depicts Austin culture very well. And what a fitting entrance to our Accenture office with highlights of Austin culture.
Yeah, so maybe in a next episode we can do the grand tour or something like that. And you know, it's funny. My team's been remote for 10 years, but when I find an office I really like, yes. I want to share it with people because it has a lot of modern elements. But
yes, and I really enjoy coming and working in this office. So whenever I get a chance, I try to be here.
That's great. So this is the Semiconductor edition, and you are the Semiconductor lead. And I spent a few years in semiconductors, and as an industry analyst, I cover them. But a couple hot topics that I wanted to hit on. And first of all, we've seen these huge investments in from chip manufacturers, and whether it's Intel and what they're doing in Ohio and the EU, you have TSMC, you have Samsung. I mean, just bursting at the seams with buildings that we would love to have the capacity today, but that's not necessarily reality. And the question for you is what does it mean for the semiconductor industry and OEMs as a whole?
Yeah, very good question. We see these announcements coming in, and first thing we can predict that these facilities coming online in next couple of years would help with the supply shortage in the long term. Right. And then there are implications for the whole semiconductor ecosystem. For example, equipment manufacturers, obviously, they're seeing the increased demand. It's good for their business. Plus, there are impacts on different layers of the semiconductor ecosystem. There are people who are supporting the equipment manufacturers. Then there are companies who are helping building the fabs. So you will see the impact across the ecosystem. And another implication across all of this is more jobs created. Yeah. And there will be variety of jobs, whether it's people working on the manufacturing floor, or the engineers helping with the yield optimization or manufacturing optimization. Right. So wide variety of job across the manufacturing work that could also be very helpful. And then there is also implications for suppliers into the manufacturing, whether it's companies providing gas or chemicals or other raw materials into the manufacturing. So it's just not building the fabs, it's the whole induced impact to the other aspects of the ecosystem.
So let's drill down into each of these. So first of all, you talked about a long litany of people who are involved in this, dare I say value chain.
Yes.
And you just released a very robust report, 100 pages,
Yes.
outlining the very deep and wide semiconductor supply chain. And
Yes.
by the way, first of all, I'm glad you did it. A lot of the questions that I get, either from the press or even investors, are mostly around designers.
Yes.
Okay? Designers that don't have a fab or might not even invest in their own transistor technology or
Yes.
something like that.
Yes.
Can you talk a little about the report, its breadth and depth, and
Yes.
maybe who the audience is and what you want people to walk away with?
Yes. You're absolutely right. There is a need by the industry executives, not only semiconductor executives who understand this very well, from OEMs or other executives from the ecosystem who want to learn more about the semiconductor value chain, plus the policymakers and additional stakeholders who are getting involved in more and more semiconductor topics now. And there was a need for having a comprehensive view of how the semiconductor ecosystem or value chain looks like. Who are the key players? What is made where? What is done in which country? So we took a stab at doing a very comprehensive report looking at the whole semiconductor value chain, starting from the design, and actually 2 layers before the design.
Right.
Just needed to get the chips designed, then the manufacturing, and then assembly and testing also. And then there are layers involved in each one of these, because you see the value chain at the top layer, then there are companies that are supporting those, and then the companies supporting those also. So to get a very good understanding of what's involved in the whole value chain so that people have a deep understanding, and it's becoming more important as we saw in the shortages.
Yeah, so do you talk about leading edge and, dare I say, lagging edge? And by the way, I have to come up with something other than lagging edge, because if those semiconductors were in the biggest shortage, but how far do you go? Do you separate the types of technologies as well?
Yeah, and to your point, sometimes it's called trailing edge or trailing node also.
But it still sounds like a negative, though.
Yeah, but today's trailing node was the leading node of yesterday.
Yes.
So that's also the point there. The other thing is this, we segmented it because we looked at it from the leading node perspective and the trailing node perspective also. And there is certain industries, certain applications actually use trailing node. And we saw actually in the recent past that a lot of shortage was from the trailing node perspective also.
Right.
And even if your application has leading node chips, if you don't have the trailing node or PMIC or some other, you cannot ship the whole system. So each one of those, whether you call them leading node or trailing node, they play a very crucial role in getting a OEM's product out. So the capacity is needed for all of these, and we looked at it from these perspective also.
Yeah, and I've been fascinated with even the specialty technologies that goes into things like photonics, as an example, or even RF with materials or different methods to do that. It is fascinating. So one-stop shopping, 100 pages.
Yes.
I didn't make it through all 100. I'll admit I read the executive summary.
Yes.
But it's a good place to go if you have any questions on it.
Yes.
So we're building all these fabs. We have this deep and wide ecosystem. But what I've seen, though, and I've talked with companies, is regardless of how much money or how many fabs, what's becoming apparent in certain places in the world is we have a talent drought, right? There's even a value chain of people in the fabs, all the way from designing it all the way to the end of getting rid of the chemicals. So can you talk about this drought we have of talent?
Yes, actually we are concerned that we'll transition from supply shortage to talent shortage.
Right.
And because all of these fabs coming online, investment in the semiconductor, whether it's manufacturing or design, and also a lot of OEMs, some of them designing their own chips, they are trying to do more in the chips themselves. So there's a need for talent, and it's increasing exponentially. And there is demand across the board also for this talent, whether it's for design or it's for somebody working on the shop floor, or versus somebody working behind the scenes in the technology enablement or testing. So we will see a wide variety of requirements coming in for talent. And we have to take steps to make sure, as I said earlier, that we don't go from supply shortage to talent shortage. And there are some short-term things that we can do, plus look at also the long-term things we can do. And we're seeing industry, taking initiative also, helping with the coursework in universities or in community colleges, and helping design some of the curriculum. And but there should be a partnership with the educational institutions and the industry to make sure we are producing the talent in this space.
Yeah, it's interesting. My first question about Intel's $100 billion investment in Columbus? Maybe it's 20. But anyways,
20 and then
a lot of billions.
20 and they later on increase it to 100 billion over many years. Yes.
Yeah, my first question was, how are you going to bring the talent in? Now, this isn't a big question about, I grew up in Ohio, right? I lived there for 26 years.
Yes.
Very talented, but when you're talking about being able to stand up a huge fab like this, you have to ask the question. I was really happy to see a multi-million, it was about $100 million investment in Ohio schools to make that happen. And if I look, I know the United States a little bit better, but if you look at where all the mega fabs are, they have public and private initiatives, whether it's in New York or Phoenix or Portland or here in Austin, right? To be able to create the talent for that to happen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that's a very important aspect. We in the industry we talk about this. That what do you need for a fab? You need the real estate, you need the equipment, you need access to power and water, and talent. So
I forgot about the water, which was an issue in a certain part of the world for some time.
Yes, exactly. So the talent is the most important aspect. And it's something that you cannot do it in a short term. You have to plan it in advance, and you have to cultivate it. One of the things that we see in the semiconductor industry is wherever there are large fabs placed, there is an ecosystem that happens around it also. You have the suppliers build their shops over there. Their suppliers build their shops over there. That's why you see there's a concentration of these kind of, Phoenix, Portland, and Austin to some extent also, Silicon Hills. And then, we suspect Ohio is going to be, with all these investments, we will see the rest of the industry will come there too, because there will be a demand if there's such a large complex of fabs there.
As a fellow Ohioan, it's really glad to see, because that part of the country needs jobs. And it's just super to see. For the last topic, I wanted to talk about something that it has been talked about everywhere, and that is the environment, right? It takes a lot of water and a lot of chemicals to run a fab. And I'm curious what strategies you're seeing, or what resources might be available, or what should people be thinking about in relation to semiconductors and the environment? I mean, gosh, we had a recent spill here in Austin that got a little bit of headlines, but it happens everywhere. Fabs that were 30 years ago, right, that they're having to go and shovel all the dirt from.
Yeah, so I think this is a very important topic, and with the increased investments in manufacturing, this is front and center for most of the equipment manufacturers, and also for the companies who are doing building fabs. And what we are seeing, companies taking the initiative in terms of reducing the footprint and doing some of the recycling initiatives, whether it's for chemical and for water. And then also what we are seeing that there is very open discussion about this, and a lot of actually large chip manufacturers have this information available on their websites, where they're publicly talking about how much they have reduced the water consumption or power consumption, what steps they are taking. Most of the companies are actually publishing annual report. Some of the companies are actually also making announcements about investment in this space. So right along the announcements, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars in building the fabs. You see also announcements on we're investing in building greener manufacturing programs.
That's good. And I always forget how much water it takes to run a fab until fabs run out of water,
Yes.
and that goes in the headlines. And in many cases, even power plants have to be built, mini power plants, if more than just a backup generator, but a real power plant that creates electricity. So fascinating stuff. So Syed, this is the first edition of the special Semiconductor podcast by More Insights and Strategy. Thought it went well. Did we leave any topics for next time?
I think one of the topics that we want to cover next time is the M&A. We are actually right now working on a report looking at the semiconductor M&A deals. And if you've noticed, there used to be much larger deals. Now the number of very large deals or mega cross-border deals has decreased. And so we are taking a view on how can you create value by doing smaller deals, because we are seeing more and more smaller deals. So we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah, and I'd love to bring in the government aspect of it too. I think we've seen that the big mega deals, big challenges were out there, but the tuck-ins are a lot easier. And not only are there cross-border challenges, but also challenges even inside our own country here from a regulatory standpoint.
Yes, I mean, semiconductor, as you know, has become a very important geopolitical topic.
Right.
So that plays into the regulatory approval concerns also. So we'll talk about that next time.
Thanks for coming on. Appreciate that.
No, thank you for coming to our office.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
This is Pat Moorhead from More Insights and Strategy, and Syed Alam, Accenture Practice Lead for Semiconductors, tuning out. We really appreciate you tuning in. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button. And if not, have a wonderful week. Thanks again.